I've always been interested in creativity and why it is that some people manage to have great ideas and do sort of great work, but the role of rest in creative lives was something that I only discovered sort of much later. When we think about people like Beethoven or Charles Darwin or great, sort of artists or composers, we often think about their work. Even biographers will write biographies about work and life. And that kind of directs our attention away from other parts of their lives in the ways that things like their leisure time or their rest might contribute to making them who they are. I work in Silicon Valley and spent years as a consultant and working on lots of projects and keeping very busy. And like a lot of people, eventually overextended myself and kind of burned out. After that experience, I kind of scaled back a little bit and sort of started experimenting with kind of new ways of working and discovered that it was actually possible for me to continue to do really interesting work and to get plenty done without doing the kinds of crazy things that in Silicon Valley are very normal. It was on a sabbatical in England where this really came together. And I started looking at the lives of other creative people and began to see a pattern that people who did extraordinary work, whose ideas changed the world, who are advocates of social justice, who bent the moral arc of the universe toward justice, that these are people who were often ambitious and committed and determined. They worked in very competitive fields sometimes, but they often labored far fewer hours than you would think would be necessary to do really good work. They also had the experience, almost universally, of working extraordinarily hard, going through that burnout process, and then discovering that it was possible to do the work that they were meant to do or that they loved to do without destroying themselves. One of the strange things about rest is everybody learns about rest the hard way. We all seem to have to discover that, what life is like without it before we can appreciate life with rest. The first and most important thing to do is to learn how to organize your day so that you have time for rest. The modern world is not one that simply gives you time for leisure, that gives you time to rest. You have to take it. What that means is you have to set up your day so that you have hours for focused, intensive work, but also hours to yourself for walks or gardening or hobbies or other things that you enjoy that help you recover your energy and give your creative mind time to work. For me, what that means is when I'm writing, I get up super early, about 5 in the morning. I am not a morning person. I'm the sort of person who, if the alarm clock is not on, I can sleep until lunch. But I have found that there is something about your mind in those super early hours, a kind of concentration, a kind of focus that you're able to have then that you can't get at any other time. I'm not going to self-distract, right? I'm not going to spend any time on Facebook or Instagram because if I'm awake or if I'm antisocial and I don't care about any of that and I'm going to get stuff done. So for me, the first important thing for resting well is starting early, doing my best, most intensive work first thing so that I feel like I have time for rest. Most people are able to work at a high level for about 90 minutes to 2 hours, and in fact, for a total of about 4 or 5 hours a day. If you can get a sustained high level of work for that period, that's actually a really good day. Charles Darwin worked like that, Dickens, Ray Bradbury, Stephen King, people who wrote dozens of books, who made great discoveries, did so working what seemed to us to be shockingly few hours. But they did that by working very intensively when they were working, and then being really conscious about their leisure time and their rest time. Charles Darwin would literally stop in mid-sentence and declare that he was done for the day and then walk out to a path behind his house and spend a couple hours out there just walking back and forth and kind of turning over ideas. He had some of his best ideas out on what he called his thinking path. He walked as many miles on that path as he spent traveling the world on the HMS Beagle as a young man. And what it turns out is that spending time like that, having those periods where you're able to relax and let your mind wander, gives your subconscious mind time to take up ideas, to take up problems that have occupied your conscious attention, but which maybe you haven't been able to solve, and often coming up with solutions that have eluded your own effort. Anytime you're trying to remember the name of an actress who was in a movie and that TV show and you can't remember them, and a few minutes later you're doing something else and their name pops into your head, that's your creative subconscious, what scientists call the default mode network, taking up a problem that you hadn't been able to solve and working on it even while you were doing something else. And so what really creative people learn to do is to harness that energy. And it allows them both to recover the mental energy and the physical energy that they spend in those intensive periods, but also allowing their creative minds, their creative subconscious, to take up these problems and to work on them more effectively. We all have that sort of experience after lunch of kind of hitting a low. When that happened to me, I would just try and power through and get some more coffee and just sort of kind of zombie my way through the afternoon. And I found that actually naps are not just for little kids on those little yoga mats. 20 minutes can be as restorative as more caffeine and can make a huge difference. People as different as Salvador Dali, the painter, and Thomas Edison would use naps as a time when they would allow their minds to kind of wander again, and sometimes as they were falling asleep, come up with, in Dali's case, sort of imagery, in Edison's case, the solutions to technical problems that they'd been working on. That turns out to be a surprisingly valuable and amazingly easy thing to learn how to do. The other thing I think that's really important for me is what in the book I call deep play, which are hobbies that are often physically engaging or cognitively engaging, that are stimulating, that offer some of the same kinds of rewards as your work, but in a very different kind of medium, from painting to mountain climbing to, for some people, video games, if they're sort of sophisticated enough. Deep play, it turns out, looks like the kind of thing that busy people can't afford, but it helps put them back in touch with the things that they love most about often very challenging work. These are all things that I learned about while I was writing the book, which have, I think, made a huge difference in my own life.